The Swamp Thing issue 4, Ram V and Mike Perkins on art, which
Pete has definitely read now.
I did read, yes. I went quiet, and part of me thought maybe I should like overdo my reactions to it on camera just while I'm reading it quietly over here, but I thought, nah, I'm not doing that.
You were too engrossed in the book to remember.
Yes. I'm not Mystery Science Theatering the Swamp Thing issue 4. So they're still in the green at the start of the issue, of course, and Woodrow is with Jennifer, and I mean, obviously there's a lot of good art in this book from Perkins, but some of the stuff with Woodrow just slyly looking or smiling at her is just like,
it's so creepy.
He is. He's stranger danger. He's the personification of stranger danger.
There's a reason that there's a point where Jennifer's like, I don't really trust you.
So Woodrow's with Jennifer. He takes her on a boat. There's a great page here where he's talking about the green, or a great panel, I should say. And she says something feels wrong, and there's a panel where it's just like it's like random vegetation, but there's just enough there to make it look like a face. There's like teeth sort of forming.
There's teeth. There's like almost like eyes.
Yeah.
There's almost like a hand coming in, like kind of doing like that sort of motion up above the face.
Yeah, it's the idea of the something coming out of darkness, and of course the other cliffhanger from last issue was Alec Holland appearing to talk to Levi Swamp Thing. And sort of give him some guidance and talks about, you know, what the green is, the idea that it's memories, that you know, he says, you know, touch the grass, like feel the green, and you know, what is it? And he's like, well, I can't really just describe it in a single word, because it'd be like saying, describe what a forest is, other than just saying it's green. You know?
Yes, but in a significantly more poetic way than that.
Yeah. Well, I'm summarizing.
Yeah. What I like about this being the memory, and again, this goes into Ram V and then the elements of storytelling, right? What is a memory if not a story that your brain's telling, right? And so here, the green is all the memories of all the different avatars, and you know what they went through, and basically each time there's a new avatar, they impact the green as much as the green impacts them, right? It's a symbiotic relationship, and I just love that concept because that is such a different vibe from what we got from, you know, Snyder Swamp Thing, or I've never read any of the Alan Moore stuff, but you know, it feels so different.
I love this page here as well. I think Perkins' art is spectacular, where I'm assuming these are referencing specific moments from previous runs
I
that I'm
so.
familiar with.
Yeah, I suspect so.
You can tell, like, by the outer ones, it looks like, okay, this is 80s Alan Moore stuff, because it, you know, it's got that scratchy feeling of that art.
Yeah.
And Abby down there at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
You could tell that this is, you know, there's a lot of respect for the previous runs that came before for the character, and you know, Alan Moore's is in many ways the most prolific one that kind of modernized the character the most, you know, for a whole. And in the same way that, you know, we look at Batman Year One as kind of the start of what modern Batman is, you know, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing.
Yeah, because Swamp Thing was around, but he was a monster, and it was Alan Moore that created the mythos around him, and you know, you had Constantine showing up, and that's where their dynamic.
I don't know if Woodrow existed before Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, but it was definitely Alan Moore who made him like such an interesting, fascinating character.
I believe Floronic Man was a Batman villain, so
sure. I mean,
sounds about right.
Why not?
You know, just on this here, it's clear that Ramby is interested in storytelling, and I mean that as an idea, not just in being good at storytelling. That's kind of his job. But you know, we talked about some of the Justice League Dark stuff. You know, what he was playing with there. A long time ago in Justice League Dark, when he was doing that stuff with the idea of stories with the different parliaments, and now this, it's you know, and even he likens these memories to being like stories, being, you know, the way that stories change as people tell them, you know, and they get retold and retold, and they shift, and memories do that as well. Like every time you remember something, it's slightly different because your memory is reconstructed.
Yeah, the perception kind of changes. You know, the green is a lot more volatile towards human beings because it's kind of remembering the worst of them and all the bad things that humans have done over our existence on Earth, which, you know, adds up to quite a bit. But he informs Alec Levi. Sorry, Alec informs Eli that there's a rot. What was the exact word he used?
Contagion.
A contagion. That was it.
Which isn't the same as the rot. It definitely looks like,
that's why I was looking for the specific word, because the rot is a specific thing.
But we've seen that before, right? So this contagion is is more of it's like the green, right? Because these almost look like carnivorous plants. You know, they're very flower-like, but they have teeth and they're scary. So they're similar to the green. And there's a portion of this where they talk about that the green is so powerful, right? That it almost needs man to ground it. But at the same time, you don't want someone grounding it that wants that power. So it has to have this delicate balance. And then, you know, it's that old saying that those who are fit to lead are the ones that don't want it, right? They're the ones that are, you know.
Yeah, because that comes from a conversation here about Levi's doubt, because he speculates, because he says the contagion started a couple of months ago, give or take, and Levi's like, wait, that's when this all started with me. Did I do this? Did I cause this contagion that's happening in the green?
I like that he doesn't know the answer. He's like, I don't know, but it's clearly connected. But you don't know if you're the cause or not.
But then there's that more uplifting idea that, yeah, you don't want this, but the ones who do, and this is actually wonderful dovetailing into the other plot thread in this issue, which is, you know, Woodrow being with Jennifer, is that Woodrow's whole thing is that he wanted access to this power. He sort of forced his way into it. You know, he was not chosen by anything. So his statement here where he says, you're the ones who want this power, the ones who desire it, are the ones that we don't want to wield it. You know, these are the ones that you should be scared of wielding it. So the idea that he makes this, you know, not that he's specifically even talking about Woodrow, but given that Woodrow is one of the most prominent villains that he ever faced, it probably is the first name that comes to mind when he makes a statement like that.
Well, when you think about who's connected to the green, right? It's Swamp Thing, it's Ivy, it's Floronic Man, right? And you look at Swamp Thing and Ivy, and they were both created by accidents, right? Depending on the origin. Versus, like you said, Floronic Man, who chose this. He wants to be a evil plant man, you know? And then so here it's no coincidence that, you know, it's Swamp Thing and Ivy, remember, because she's not poison, just Ivy, that are able to wrangle the oldest form of the Swamp Thing, you know, to calm it down and for him to tap into those memories.
I love the idea that the Woad-Woes is the original Swamp Thing. It's, you know, the purest form, the first one.
I particularly like the description he has, because he tries to go up and kind of like stop it, and the way he talks about just the force of the wind and the pressure that's been left in its wake as it walks, like sort of catching him up into like a tide of like a gust. I really like that. And then of course the hand comes in and Ivy's there to sort of help, and they work together. She kind of tries to hold its foot in place while he reaches into it, not to like do anything unseemly, just to connect to it and sort of look into the memories, because if this is the oldest swamp being here, then in theory it has the best pool of memories to take from.
It's not even necessarily that it has the best. I think it's more it has the context, because that's the whole thing that Alec is teaching him, is that over time they've still got the memories, but they've lost the context, so things have got warped and they've lost their meaning, and they focus in on the evil elements because of that.
The negativity leaves the biggest imprint.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas going back to this first Avatar, it'll have the context,
which I think
in him.
Just on the idea of the negative things having the impact, I think there's a psychological element to the book where a lot of this is more a metaphor for his own depression and his own self-doubt and all those things, which I think it would be a disservice to the storytelling to kind of gloss over like the representation that a lot of this gives that stuff. The idea of the things in the dark that are there being representative of your own sort of demons sort of like lingering beneath. The idea of the negative things being the stuff that sticks, and you don't focus on the good, you don't focus on the things that should make you feel better and should give you sort of reassurance in the world and yourself and whatever. You know, even here he sees the memory. We're getting more teases of what his brother was doing when he was visiting his father. And it definitely looks like he had that's a sacrificial looking knife he's got in his hand, and there's some sort of weird shit going on.
Right, and remember the area he's from. It's this wild land out in India, you know. And also, don't get the names Levi and Jacob. Right, those are very biblical names. And I'm not versed in the Bible enough to know what the names represent, but there has to be.
Jacob, I think, was that Abraham's son?
Well, if that's the case, I mean, think of the story of Abraham. I know that one.
And Levi
I think Jacob was the elder child that Abraham was supposed to sacrifice. It could be wrong.
Yeah, and Levi was, of course, the god of genes.
I knew some stupid joke was coming. I didn't know that was going to be it. So real quick, Connor brought up the Wodos, right? Which made me think of I just listened to a podcast talk about the idea of the Green Man, right, in mythology, and that basically you can tie the Green Man back to paganism and the worship of nature, and so just the idea. So I looked up, and you type into Wiki Wodos, it brings you to the Wild Man and the Green Man, and this is again Ram V going with the storytelling that at first there was nature, and that's what man
from what
worshipped.
I'm familiar with. Wodos is like it's like a European equivalent of like Pan,
right? Or Bigfoot, depending on the story. The Wild Man of the Woods, who if you look at it as a wild wood ape, it's not the same. But if you look at it as this nature spirit that lives out there, almost like who's the dude in Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit that turns into the bear?
Bjorn.
Yeah, him. Almost or Radagast, the brown, right? They're these dudes that live out in the forest that are
Jim
that end up becoming one with nature, right? Like they can command the animals, they know all the hiding spots, and it's because they've sacrificed their quote humanity to go live amongst the animals, and that's kind of what
civilization, so to speak.
Yeah, and that and that here with the Green Man and what it means with Swamp Thing, right, is that at first nature was worshipped, and then other things started coming as humanity developed, and then basically it's no longer a thing that's worshipped; it's just something that is. And if mankind, as we're getting in with the Prescott when we get to the end of the book, right, it's just something to be mined, and it's not anything that's worshipped or to be treated with respect, and that's what the Green is pushing back against now, right? And when that gets to Levi and his issues about it, like Pete was talking about, all the darkness, all the depression, and all of this, the Green this time chose him for a reason, right? Is it because his negative headspace dealing with the death of his dad, and then his brother pulling some weird occult stuff that is poisoning the Green, right? It reached out to this man who clearly needs it, right?
What might be really interesting is if it essentially chose him to stop his brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
That might be it might make him feel worse in that he wasn't chosen for himself. It wasn't anything he did.
Well,
it was
actually, I think
his connection to someone else.
I think something Matt just said there's interesting, because it just said the Green's acting out because of what mankind is doing to it,
right.
And it's chosen in Levi, perhaps because Levi needs the Green. I think there's something interesting about the Green needing Levi as much as Levi needs the Green. The idea that it's a mutual beneficial thing where Levi
symbiosis.
needs the purpose, he needs the strength and the support of the Green, and the power that will come with that. But the Green need him, partly because of who he's connected to, and partly because of his place in the world, but ultimately because he is deep down going to make the right choices. He is the good, and to get back to biblical stuff, the idea that two brothers, one is inherently good and one is inherently not, is a very biblical thing.
That goes to Cain and Abel, right?
Yeah. So, but anyway, to get back to sort of here, we cut back to Jennifer and Woodrow. One of my favorite panels in the whole book is when Woodrow starts acting creepy and she's hiding from him. You don't realize what she's screaming at until the next page, and it's because she's seen Swamp Thing for the first time properly. But the all-black panel of just her eyes and teeth screaming is particularly great. And Woodrow, recognizes Swamp Thing, of course, and Swamp Thing's like, I know you. And obviously, this is the memory of the Green. This is the memory that he's been tapping into that is telling him who this guy is. That's why he's recognizing her.
He doesn't know immediately names or exactly what he's like, but I know we're not friends.
A familiarity, right? There's something there.
It's again those strong emotions, especially the negative ones here, because I'm sure Alec Holland had lots of negative emotions attached with Woodrow.
Oh, for sure.
They're powerful enough to come through immediately.
And Woodrow's got that creepy smile as he says, "You're going to become a monster eventually, just like me. Like this is your inevitability."
Well, and again, it's sure he's a monster because of how he is, but it's not his actions, So it's Woodrow's actions that he seems to be trapped in the Green, right? Like I can't remember the last time we saw him in Justice League Dark, but I know it didn't end up well for him because he ended up doing the Parliament of Flowers thing, and and then Alec basically sacrificed himself to save Wonder Woman and Zatanna.
Yeah, it was a while ago. I think, did we see Floronic Man in the Harley? No, we didn't. Never mind. No. They just thought it was Floronic Man, but we didn't actually see him, did we?
No, it was another version of Ivy, right?
Yes.
But yeah, and he looks so sinister there when he calls him that you're a monster just like me.
Oh, yeah,
so it's like, well,
proper creepy.
Yeah. So is he going to use this contagion to try to unbalance things?
I mean, it's not a million miles to sort of suspect that Woodrow has something to do with it, even possibly, or at the very least, he's going to take advantage of it now that it does exist. Right. But I'm sure that's stuff that the book's going to get into. They wake up back in the lab. If you'd forgotten where they were when they actually went into the green, she was giving him a scan, and
a CAT scan,
they go home in silence. They're dealing with this, and she talks about how she saw a monster in her dream, and you just see his looking. And I think one of the things I love about Swamp Thing, when it's written in a way that I love about it, I love the idea of this layer of this monstrous side of the world, whether it's another realm or whatever. And here, this idea of getting in and out of the green, and it's this kind of monstrous land. Like that panel of him just sort of like putting his hand in his head, and he's just in the shadows and the darkness, and this look of despair. I think it's almost Lovecraftian in the idea of this cosmic horror that you can't comprehend. It's so big and like otherworldly.
I also like the shift here that it's doing with the typical, Alec and Abby stuff was, he's a monster,
right.
Where and it's so,
it's
physical,
also very
so you can
Hulk.
see it, but there's the man underneath. This here, it's kind of the other way around, where she's talking about, there was this horrible monster. It was like the swamp had come alive, and that's obviously that's him that she's talking about, but she doesn't realize it, and it's the monster beneath instead. It's a nice reversal.
Yeah.
Right, which that's what I was going to. It's very Hulk, and this book actually reminds me a lot of Immortal Hulk, right? And and it's curious that if it is Al Ewing that he's working with on Venom, like what is that story going to be, and why do I have to read it now?
It's so funny that DC over the years have tried to do their take on Hulk, and likewise Man-Thing is definitely Marvel's take on Swamp Thing.
Right.
But it's so funny that realistically, Swamp Thing and Hulk are the comparables. They're the ones that actually should be compared.
They're both men of science that were turned into monsters by their science.
But they both have their own... I mean, obviously, Immortal Hulk in this has a lot of comparisons, but I wouldn't say that Hulk traditionally has as much in common with Swamp Thing, but they definitely have their own spin on things, usually.
Well, it's the fact that these are both psychological books right now, talking about what makes somebody a monster, right?
It's the horror of the trauma and the monster underneath.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Just waiting, and
we have scientists from the evil company, the Prescott Company, like basically in the MRI like surgery room, well, not surgery, you know what I mean, the scanner.
Yeah, CAT scan.
And they're basically, you've got hazmat suits on. They're scanning for DNA and samples, and they're looking for anything like. And because we knew they were paying attention to him before, we had those teases. But this is straight up. No, they're looking for something, and they seem to like get the results of the CAT scan, which show like some plant-esque features coming out of his brain.
So tendrils.
Which is, if you remember last issue, that was the visuals of what kicked all this off. Like when he was having the scan, it kind of burst out of that image into the green.
Yeah. So the end of the issue is him calling Amanda Waller Bella Reeve. So we knew this was coming. I suspect it's going to read fine if you don't read Swamp Thing, or if you don't read Suicide Squad.
This isn't the Suicide Squad that we, that even showed up on Man-Bat, or that's in Teen Titans Academy. Like there's Peacemaker, but I don't recognize any of the other ones here. Do you?
Not really. I do have a question though. Why does Amanda Waller look so weird on this page?
I think this is Mike Perkins struggling drawing regular people, because this has been his weakness ever since we've seen his stuff.
It's never looked like this though. She looks like it looks like she was drawn much taller, and then they had to like squish her into the page.
Yeah. So it used to happen when you would put a widescreen movie on a full screen.
It's like a forced perspective trick, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what's weird is
she's the wall, but she should not be taking up 60% of the page.
But what's weird though is that none of the other characters on the page behind her have this effect. It's just her, which is why it looks kind of weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
The whole thing's a bit odd. So they are amazing in this issue. It's just this last page that's goddamn weird.
Okay.
So I mean, as long as the next Swamp Thing reads well without Suicide Squad, I have no problem with this being a step in the story. But
did either of you have any plans to read Suicide Squad? Because I immediately looked and went, "No, I'm not bothering."
No, we stopped reading Teen Titans Academy when they handed Suicide Squad. Like, nope.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If they called it part 1 of 2 and like the next issue of Swamp Thing was part 2, I'd make a point of reading it. But as of right now, it doesn't seem
very telling that this says to be continued and not to be continued in Suicide Squad.
Yeah, it doesn't make you read it.
Yeah, no. I definitely feel like this is just him borrowing the concept.
Imagine reading that Suicide Squad book right now, and there's an issue that ties into a Teen Titans book 1 month, and then the following month it's tied into a Suicide or a Swamp Thing issue. Like, that's 2 months in a row of that book where it's just kind of like a weird support book to other things.
And it's only like 4 issues in or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that,
just
5.
Like, it just makes that book feel even less like attractive for so many reasons. So that's just kind of weird. Swamp Thing was great though. Mythology stuff, more character stuff. I'm also digging the evil company. It's always been a factor, a sort of staple of the Swamp Thing story since the 80s. Is the idea of it was always the I always forget the name of the company from the Miller run, but like that's always been a staple of the character pretty much since then. So I'm digging it.
If you haven't, go read Flintstones. Mark Russell did a digital first. That was basically Swamp Thing versus capitalism, and it's fantastic. It's basically what Pete's describing. This one's way more sinister than the Mark Russell one, which of course is typical Mark Russell satire.
This is way. I mean, I didn't read the Mark Russell one, but this the darkness of this book, the sort of the horror that we can't quite comprehend, the shadows in the world that exists beyond the shadows. That's kind of the Swamp Thing that I really love. So this book's speaking to me in many levels. Matt, what are you giving Swamp Thing?
I'm in this 9.5.
Connor.
I mean, I thought I was being generous with. Well, not generous. I thought I was being fair by giving it a 9, and that was still pretty high. But
yeah, I'm going with a 9. I may give it an 8.5, but that weird Amanda Waller on that last page is getting half a point.
That's the thing that's keeping it from that's the thing that's keeping it from a 10 for me.
So I'll also go with a 9 out of 10. So and because I expected something in that range is why I said I'm not talking about Justice League. I'm going to read something instead.
Look, you made the right choice.
I did. Choices were made. Choices were made, and they were correct. All right.